Hey everyone, I'm currently at the caravan, no decent mic, no dramatic lighting, just me, my bed, and my very monetization-less YouTube page in the background. I already had this story recorded and ready to go. It was written by me and Gutter Press Tales, but I thought I'd add a quick intro to prove him still human to appease the YouTube overlords. So yeah, this is my bedroom. Yes, that is my demonetized dashboard. And yes, I'm still here. Anyway, let's get into the story. Moving to this street was supposed to be a fresh start. The houses were charming, the lawns were perfect, and the neighbours were all smiles. It seemed like the perfect place, a quiet little slice of suburbia where I could finally breathe. But I didn't realise that those smiles were just masks, hiding a dark secret that ties every single person on this block together. And the worst part is, I think they know I'm starting to figure it out. The street had one of those postcard perfect names, Sycamore Lane. It was just a single, quiet street ending in a neat little cul-de-sac, lined with houses that looked like they'd all been built last week. The lawns were this almost unnatural shade of green, and every afternoon, the sprinklers would kick on in perfect, staggered unison. That quiet hiss was pretty much the only sound you'd ever hear. I'd bought the house at the very end, number 24, a little smaller than the others, but it was all mine. That first week was pleasant, almost unsettlingly pleasant. Every morning, like clockwork, I'd pull out of my driveway, and my neighbour across the street, a woman named Carol, would be out grabbing her newspaper at the exact same time. She'd flash this wide, bright smile and give me a wave that felt a little too sharp, a little too practiced. And it wasn't just her. As I'd drive down the lane, other residents would be out, weeding a flower bed, polishing a mailbox, sweeping a porch that was already spotless, and they would all stop, turn, and wave. Not just a lazy little flick of the wrist, but this full, deliberate motion. All of them. In sync. At first I just figured it was one of those super friendly communities, I'd wave back, feeling like I was an extra on some wholesome TV show. My neighbour to the left, a man I only knew as Mr. Henderson, even brought over a welcome basket. It was this lovely wicker thing filled with homemade jam, a bottle of wine, and a small, polished black stone. It was smooth and cool to the touch. "Just a little something from all of us," he said, but his smile never quite reached his eyes. "To welcome you to the lane. We're so glad you're here." Later that night, while I was unpacking, I looked out my window and saw Mr. Henderson walking over to the new family that had just moved in 2 doors down. He was carrying an identical wicker basket, and as I watched, I saw my other neighbours all standing on their porches, just watching him. The smiles were gone. They were just watching, waiting. When he finished, he turned and gave a single tiny nod, and as one, they all turned and went back inside. The synchronicity of it sent this cold shiver down my spine that I just couldn't shake. The little oddities started to pile up, things that just felt wrong in the corner of your eye. Nobody on Sycamore Lane ever had guests. Not once did I see a strange car parked on the street. No kids ever played outside, even though I could see small bikes on porches and swing sets in backyards. The whole lane operated with this silent, clockwork precision that was starting to feel less like a community and more like a compound. The real turning point came about a month in. It was a Tuesday night, almost midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I was in my kitchen getting a glass of water. My window looks out onto the street, right toward the cul-de-sac, and that's when I saw it. One by one, The porch light of every single house on the street flicked on. Then, the front doors opened. From each house, a resident stepped out. Mr. Henderson, Carol from across the street, families I barely knew. They moved without making a sound, walking right to the centre of the cul-de-sac. They formed a perfect circle. For what felt like forever, they just stood there, their heads bowed in the dim yellow glow of the porch lights. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see their lips moving. It was a low, collective murmur that didn't seem to carry on the wind. It was more like a hum, a single, sustained note that made the air feel like it was vibrating. In the centre of the circle was a small stone pedestal that I swear I'd never seen before. Carol stepped forward and placed something on it. From my window, it looked exactly like the polished black stone from my welcome basket. Then, just as silently as they came, they broke apart. They turned and walked back to their houses, the doors closing in these soft, successive clicks. Then the porch lights went out, one by one, plunging the street back into total darkness. I stood frozen in my kitchen for what felt like an hour, my heart just hammering against my ribs. I tried to explain it away. A weird neighbourhood meeting, some bizarre local tradition, but it felt like a ritual. It felt ancient and deeply, deeply wrong. The next morning, I walked out to the cul-de-sac. The pedestal was gone. There wasn't even a scuff mark on the asphalt where it had stood. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing, if the stress of the move was finally getting to me. But I knew what I saw, and for the first time, living there, I felt a real flicker of fear. After that night, everything changed. Or maybe I was the one who changed. I started watching them, really watching, and I think they could feel me doing it. The friendly waves became less frequent. The smiles grew tighter, more strained. Now, when I drive down the street, they'd still stop what they were doing, but they wouldn't wave. They'd just stare. Their eyes would follow my car until it was completely out of sight. That feeling of being constantly watched was suffocating. I started keeping my blinds closed, but it didn't help. I felt like their eyes could see right through the walls. My cat, who's usually a really social animal, started refusing to go near the windows. He'd just spend all day huddled under my bed, hissing at shadows. One afternoon, I let him out into my fenced-in backyard. 10 minutes later, I heard this terrible yowl. I rushed outside and found him cowering by the back door, fur on end, just staring at the fence. On the other side stood Mr. Henderson, perfectly still. His hands were just resting on the top of the fence, and he was looking down into my yard. "Everything all right over there?" I called out, my voice shaking a little. He lifted his head, and that same empty smile spread across his face. "Just admiring your garden," he said, his voice completely flat. "It's important to tend to things, to make sure everything grows properly." He held my gaze for a second too long before he turned and walked back to his house. My cat never went outside again. Desperate for some kind of answer, I tried looking up Sycamore Lane online. I searched town records, historical archives, anything I could think of, but there was nothing. It was like the street didn't exist before 5 years ago. There were no previous owners listed for any of the houses, no construction permits, no sales records beyond the people living there now. It was a digital ghost. The paranoia was just eating me alive. I started hearing that humming sound again at night, even when everyone was inside their houses. It was faint, this low thrumming that seemed to come from the ground itself, like the whole street was alive and breathing around me. I knew I wasn't welcome here. I wasn't part of whatever this was. I was the outsider who'd seen the crack in their perfect little world. And I was beginning to understand that they don't just let outsiders leave. They make them part of the whole. My breaking point came on a Saturday. I watched the entire neighborhood, every single resident except me, file into the little community center at the entrance of the lane. A small, windowless brick building I'd never actually seen anyone use. This was my chance. I had to know what was in their houses. With my heart pounding in my chest, I put on a pair of gloves, slipped out my back door, and crept along the fence line to Mr. Henderson's house. His back door was, of course, unlocked. Why would they need locks here? The inside of his house was sterile, immaculate. It looked more like a model home than a place someone actually lived. No family photos, no knickknacks, no clutter. Just perfect furniture and this faint, cloying smell of dirt and ozone. The humming was so much stronger in here. It led me to the basement door. I hesitated, my hand trembling on the doorknob. Every single instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to just get in my car and drive until Sycamore Lane was a distant memory. But I had to know. I opened the door. It wasn't a basement. It was a cave of damp, dark earth. The humming was a real vibration here, coming from the center of the room. And in the center, directly under the house, was a sprawling network of thick, pulsating roots. These weren't tree roots. They were dark, almost black, and they glowed with this faint inner light. They stretched out in every direction, weaving under the foundation and disappearing into the dirt, connecting to the other houses. And then I saw it. Woven into the fleshy roots were things: a child's teddy bear, a silver locket, a single leather shoe, personal things, memories, and nestled among them I saw other items: a driver's license, a wallet, a phone. They belonged to the family who had moved out of my house right before I moved in. They hadn't moved out. They had been absorbed, fed to whatever this thing was. Suddenly the humming stopped. A cold, dead silence filled the air. And from upstairs, I heard a floorboard creak. I scrambled back up the stairs, my mind just reeling. I didn't even make it to the kitchen. Mr. Henderson was standing in the living room. Behind him, crowding the doorway, stood Carol and a dozen other residents. They weren't smiling anymore. Their faces were blank, their eyes totally empty and ancient. "We knew you'd look eventually," Mr. Henderson said, but the voice wasn't his. It was a chorus, a dozen voices blended together, all speaking as one. "It's all right. The questioning is a natural part of the process." He took a step toward me. "The lane provides, the lane protects. All it asks is that we tend to the roots, that we become one with the whole. You've been a discordant note for too long. It's time for you to join the song." I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just ran. I shoved past him, past that silent crowd in the doorway, and sprinted out into the unnaturally perfect street. I didn't look back. I burst into my own house, grabbed my keys and my wallet, and was out the door in less than 10 seconds. I didn't pack a single thing. As I threw my car into reverse, I glanced up. Every single resident of Sycamore Lane was standing on their lawn. They were all perfectly still, hands at their sides, just watching me. They didn't make any move to stop me. They just watched, their faces completely blank, as I sped away, leaving my house, my things, and a piece of my sanity behind in that pristine, silent, hungry little neighborhood. I never went back. I still don't know why they let me go. Maybe they knew the fear, and the memory would be a better prison than any basement could ever be. Sometimes, late at night, when it's quiet, I think I can still feel that low hum vibrating deep in my bones. I know it's not over. They know where I am. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. Anyway, YouTube and I are currently in a situationship. But if you'd like to support this very human, very not templated chaos, Patreon exists. It has stories, it has darkness, it has me. And apparently that's controversial. So if you enjoy original horror written by actual humans, hi, that's me. You can join me over there also, where I extend the existence of this allegedly mass-produced content. Oh yeah, fun fact you didn't ask for. There is, in fact, a real person behind this channel. She's tired, but she's here, and she's run out of chocolate. Good night.